Congress, Dr. Raman Goel, who has staged a fantastic meeting. Let's start by giving him a hand, please. And he's going to address us, and his topic is going to be weight regain. Time to redefine. I can't read it.
He's going to talk to us on weight regain, time to rethink. I think all of us know Dr. Raman Goel. We have witnessed the feast of academic session as well as the entertainment so well organized, the workshop, the scientific session. So I invite Dr. Raman Goel to give his talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Phoebe and Dr. Kohler. It's a pleasure to address this meeting, and I think this is the closest I get to a presidential talk ever in this organization. So thank you. I took my privilege to talk in this session. So in place of doing an academic talk, Dr. Phoebe, I thought I'll use every minute of this conference for academic work rather than administrative work. So I'm going to talk about weight regain after surgery and a time to rethink about it, because I have been watching discussions on the groups, on the OSICON group, on the WhatsApp group, and I realized there is a lot of things to understand and a lot of things to learn from history. This presentation is on behalf of our entire team, and thanks to all the team members for being there. Friends, there was a study published in 2010 in obesity surgery. It said that after bariatric surgeries, 79% patient reported weight regain. So this is a moderating thought to all the aggressive surgeons. But the good part is that only 30% had significant weight regain. And what is a significant weight regain? Significant weight regain, as they defined, was that when patient gained 15% of lost weight, right? It was not 15% of total weight. Now this also was analyzed in different terms and was found to have been related to increased food urges, alcohol intake, and decreased well-being, and is inversely related to self-monitoring or frequency of follow-up. But this inverse relationship wasn't statistically significant. So this is the background on which we start this talk today. And there is also a misperception or a perception that these patients start believing that the treatment of weight loss that we offer to them will automatically become permanent. They will automatically start having lifestyle changes which they were not able to have before surgery. And this misperception is the reason why they have an increased tendency of weight regain. So, how do we define weight regain? At what interval after surgery we brand somebody that he's gaining weight, it's a failure of surgery? Is reason of weight regain important? Is it important at all? Because if somebody has gained weight, why do we look at it? And if we have defined him as a person who has gained weight, is intervention necessary? When and what? So, as all of you know, surgery works by reducing primarily every surgery, whether even it's ileal transposition, works by reduction in size of the stomach. Typically, we reduce it to size of about 1/10 of the original size, most of the times. And then it stretches, and the person is able to eat almost 250 to 300 cc of food at about 1 to 1.5 years. Friends, this still remains the same amount of food which a nutritionist advises to a overweight person for weight loss. And with this much quantity of food, our overweight persons lose weight, they don't gain weight. So why should post-bariatric patient who is eating only about 2 slices of bread a meal gains weight? This is important to understand, and then we move on. So can surgery fail? can surgery fail in terms of weight loss? It's almost nearly impossible. I apologize to all the people who have been presenting their data about failures and about using different procedures for ensuring that failure should not happen. If it's a technically good surgery, whether it's sling gastrectomy, gastric bypass, NGB, XYZ, it's extremely unlikely to fail. Failure, as we discuss with individual patients who are gaining weight, is more in terms of altered eating behavior. And failure in surgery happens because if the person is not following the instructions, let's say in a gastric bypass, where he's not chewing food adequately and is leading to, or eating calorie dense food and it's leading to a stretching the stoma, which Dr. Phoebe has a solution to. So most of the time, it's a failure of the patient and not the failure of surgery. It could be also the failure of the team, okay, or the follow-up that the team manages. So friends, going further on, what could be the causes of failure? As I said, stoma dilatation in a gastric bypass is mostly the reason of person overeating, because the entire jejunum works like a stomach after some time if the stomach gets dilated. But there are an n number of other causes, as we all know. It could be genetic. Person remains in obesogenic surroundings. A person in a marketing field has to eat 3 meals a day outside. He is sitting in front of the director who is having alcohol, so he is also having alcohol. He cannot deny a certain quality of food. Lifestyle, person is eating calorie dense food, lack of exercise, we all know that. Professor Edward Mason, the father of bariatric surgery, mentioned this in 2012 for gastric bypass. He says if a gastric bypass fails, if it's well done, I would not think of revising it. I would look for adverse childhood events in these patients. Half of the failed surgical patients had adverse childhood events. Okay, so what are these adverse childhood events? Adverse childhood events could be psychological, like swearing, insulting, fear of violence to the child. It could be physical, that the child had been pushed, groped, slapped. Sexual, touch, fondle intercourse. Household dysfunctions like parents using alcohol and drugs. Mothers being treated violently, like slapped, kicked, threatened. Or there is a parent who attempted a suicide, or there could be criminal behavior. Now, this is the percentage that's seen in these patients in number. I'm not going to read that. But the important thing is, before jumping on to doing a procedure, please sit with your patient and analyze them. Now, this particular study, which is published in American Journal of Preventive Medicine, has shown the relationship of adverse childhood events to many diseases. I'm just talking of 35 BMI plus obesity. And they say that if you have one of these adverse childhood events, is 7% prevalence, 2 childhood adverse events, 9.4%, 3 childhood event, 10.3, and if you put them together, it's almost about 40 to 50%. So it's important to talk about it. How does it happen? When an adverse childhood event experience happens, it leads to various social and emotional changes in the child, which leads to adoption of helpless behavior in terms of alcohol consumption or drug abuse or depression, disease, disability, and early deaths. So, Professor Mason spoke to this gentleman who did this study, and he said, as a surgeon, you don't need to go into much in detail. Ask these questions. When did you become obese? And do you know why did you become obese at that time? What happened at that time in your family? And if you are able to get the answer, this is the reason for weight regain. I agree it's an escapist way if somebody can say that surgeon is trying to shift the blame. But you are not changing the person by doing surgery. So the treatment is required is counseling at that stage, because patient and care variables do not change by surgery. So that was one aspect of it. I'm going to take 4 or 5 points which could be responsible for weight regain. Fat mass set point is important, and weight gain tendency. Last year, there was a presentation by Dr. Kaplan in OSICOM that there is a tendency of continued weight gain with age and environmental influences. This doesn't change after surgery. So, there is a fat mass which keeps increasing over a period of time if there is no intervention done. Now, we did a surgery, the patient, the fat mass has come down, but over a period of time, the person is gaining the same amount of weight or fat mass as he would gain without surgery. So this is not weight regain. You need to prepare your patient to accept 2 kg or 1 kg or 3 kg weight gain that was happening even before surgery every year or whatever the time frame. So this is important to realize because this is not related to surgery. So surgery is the only method of changing the set point is from fat mass to set point. Mars study again says that the gastric bypass, when gastric bypass also increases the total energy expenditure, and that is why the set point changes. Fair enough. I mean that's what we must know as a physician. Another issue is hunger. It's very funny that we started talking about hunger. I mean, Dr. Phoebe told me after the gastric bypass, which he underwent himself, that he doesn't feel hungry. But hunger was never an issue with most of the procedures. Satiety was the issue. Hunger is a natural phenomenon which must happen. So, this hunger issue mostly came after sleep came into being and we started discussing ghrelin. But as was discussed yesterday, and we all know after 5 to 6 months of a sleep, the hunger does come back. Hunger is not the issue. Failure of satiety is the issue, and that's why when we talk of band-aid bypass, we are inducing satiety with a smaller meal, continued satiety. So that point must be clear in your mind. Do not think that because patient is feeling hungry, the surgery has failed. Absorption is another issue because malabsorptive procedures were extremely popular some 30-40 years back and are trying to make a comeback now. It's extremely difficult to define normal absorptive capacity in a human being. There is a differential absorption in different parts of the intestine, and there could be deficiencies which are so gradual, so subtle, and they are asymptomatic deficiencies. So by the time symptoms comes, they become irreversible deficiencies. So it's important that malabsorptive surgery is not required. In this article of GMR, Dr. Mason has contributed an article which he says the guy who gave gastric bypass that we should become more and more conservative because we do not understand human being, we do not understand the bowel. And fortunately, as has been discussed, everybody knows here, the learned audience here, that even a gastric bypass does not cause malabsorption. Then comes psychological issues, and my psychologist is presenting her data today in the afternoon. We know that binge eating disorders and stress leads to hyperphagia, but we do not know cause-effect relationship between depression and obesity. So we know that they overeat. What we have observed and we are presenting is that depression reduces 65% patients. Self-reported depression before surgery and 1 year after surgery, 65% patients were no more depressed. But what has also been observed is they end up with euphoria. More number of them are having alcohol now. A good number of them are also having calorie-dense food. Metabolic rate, as I said, total energy expenditure, Mars study has shown, goes up after gastric bypass. But what we have observed in our studies, that those patients who have lower BMI and higher metabolic rate, they lose more weight. Those patients with less fall in BMR after surgery or less fall in metabolic rate are losing more weight. But I do not know, we are following up these patients, whether those patients who have a higher metabolic rate will maintain their weight longer, or those, and there are hardly any studies on this subject, or those where their metabolic rate falls down, they will gain weight. Exercise is another issue, and post-op exercise is indicative of post-op compliance. It's like somebody goes on a beach in the morning for walk, can we identify a patient before the primary surgery that he is a poor outcome patient? I know everybody has their thoughts on it, but there is hardly any evidence to pinpoint particular reasons. If we are able to identify that, do we have the conviction to refuse surgery in these identified patients? I mean, there has been situation that somebody comes with a 34 BMI where the guideline is 35. Does the surgeon have the guts to say, I will not operate you because you are 34 BMI? Okay. So the same thing remains in patient who is a high risk patient. You know that this person will gain weight because he is an alcoholic, because he is on a certain, who has a history of adverse childhood experiences. Now that we identify, okay, now you have a very good team who analyze these patients and have identified patients who are a cause in a particular patient who has gained weight. They have identified, okay, this person is eating calorie dense food, or this person is alcoholic, he is depressed, he is overeating, he is eating at night. Do you have the conviction and guts to refuse a revision surgery in this patient? And this is what I want people to accept when it is not indicated. These are special patients. And if you have the conviction to do that, do you have the wherewithal to manage this patient lifelong? Because this is your patient, nutritionist patient who is not in your clinic. To manage these patients, to ensure that they maintain their weight, to counsel them in terms of psychology, and counsel them in terms of diet, that they remain your patients, even though you are not reoperating. So I think bariatric surgery is not about surgery alone, not about cutting and suturing. Bariatric surgery is about managing these patients lifelong. Your life or patient's life, whichever is longer. So please do that, because I find it very amazing that there is a lot of talk about stronger surgeries. Okay. Again, I refer to Professor Mason, who said that if simple restrictive procedure fails, it was always my inclination to work with the patient to solve other problems affecting weight loss rather than going to a more radical procedure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Raman. That was a very thoughtful presentation on the difficult subject which is emerging now. As we are doing more and more bariatric procedures, the problem of weight regain, it has always been there, and it gives a new perspective to a common problem which we must keep in mind before we really go in for a resurgery. Because all of us know that the resurgery definitely has much more morbidity than the primary surgery. Thank you, Raman. This being a presidential lecture, we will not have any questions. Thank you. Thank you.